Okay, I believe we're sharing. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Calvin Lincez. I am currently the Terrestrial Region Manager at the Mushkegowuk Council's Lands and Resources Department. I grew up on Fox Lake Reserve, and I am a band member of Chapleau Cree First Nation. So today we are going to be starting or kickstarting a series of information sessions for community members that have to do with the Omushkego, Wahkohtowin, PFP. Today's information session is going to be about the background of resolutions that gave us a mandate to bring this proposal to the communities. The format of the weekly discussions, it's going to be a virtual form of community engagement where I will present myself. We're also going to try to get some guests on when we have to address this, like a specific topic that requires certain types of experts. But for the most part, it's going to be myself presenting on specific PFP related topics, and I will also address questions and concerns. You can post any questions or concerns that you have in the Facebook Live chat. You could also get a hold of me via email, or you can bring your questions to the Zoom meetings. So the basic format is for roughly half an hour to an hour from 11 to noon. I will be doing these presentations, and they will be immediately followed up by a Zoom meeting. We will post the link to the Zoom meeting in the Facebook chat. These Zoom meetings are intended for Mushkegowuk citizens so that they can come and ask questions and just learn about what the PFP is and what this proposal is about. So this is basically a schedule that I came up with for topics that I'm going to address. It's obviously a subject to change. If there's a topic that community members want me to address, then just let me know. Type it in the Facebook chat, or send me an email, or bring it up in the Zoom meetings. But we're basically going to start at the beginning. So today I'm just going to be talking about the resolutions, AGA resolutions, and how they gave the Lands and Resources Department a mandate to bring this proposal to the communities. Next week, I'm going to be talking about timelines, so the timelines that we're working in, and at the end of this presentation, I'm going to offer some sort of initial comments about the timelines that we're working in. The third session, I'm going to directly address the question of what is a PFP. PFP is an acronym for a project finance for a permanence. But while the third session is going to be reserved to directly address that, I am going to be slowly introducing the idea of a PFP in the first two sessions as well. They're very complex, so I just want to try to break it down as much as possible, and just, to help people understand what's going on. The fourth session, I'm going to go into the specific mechanics of our own proposed PFP, the Omushkego Wahkohtowin PFP. In the fifth session, I'm going to answer the question, what is a conservation trust fund? Because it's very central to a PFP. And then in the sixth session, I'm going to go into other PFPs around the world and similar agreements in Canada. Just to, give the community members a sense of what experiences of this sort, or how other Indigenous peoples have experienced these types of agreements, how it's played out, and hopefully answer a lot of questions and concerns in the process. So the basic outline for today's presentation, I'm just going to answer the question, why am I talking about the resolutions? And I'm talking about the resolutions that get passed at the Mushkegowuk Annual General Assembly. Then I'm going to talk about Omushkegowuk values and beliefs, or standards that Mushkegowuk personnel have to follow. I'm going to talk about action items. And when I get to the third topic, I'm going to start getting into what a PFP is. So how the PFP responds to some of the problems and challenges that the chiefs have asked the Mushkegowuk Council to develop proposals that are solutions to those problems and challenges. The fourth item that I'm going to talk about today is a community engagement protocol. Then I'm going to offer some initial remarks about the timelines that we're working in. And then I have 2 pages of the resolutions that I used for this presentation. If community members want, I can post those resolutions in the chat, along with a link to the Mushkegowuk Council's webpage where you can find any of those resolutions. Okay, so getting into it, why the resolutions? Why are they important for the Mushkegowuk Council, and specifically for Mushkegowuk Council personnel? So the Mushkegowuk Council of Chiefs gives directives to the Mushkegowuk Council using resolutions that get passed at the Mushkegowuk Annual General Assembly. These resolutions are the main way that, I guess one way to put it, the main way that the chiefs, the Mushkegowuk chiefs, give marching orders to the Mushkegowuk Council. So it's how they set priorities, establish mandates, and identify problems and challenges that require solutions. So in addition to this, through the resolutions, the Mushkegowuk chiefs also communicate the standards, values, and beliefs that are to guide the decisions and actions of Mushkegowuk Council personnel. So I'm kind of offering a sort of an interpretation, I guess, of the resolutions that has 2 layers. So in terms of the first layer, what I'm calling like values and beliefs or standards that Mushkegowuk personnel have to follow, this is one layer, and this is sort of like the things that we have to keep in mind, or that we have to be mindful of when we are in our decision-making processes and the actions that we take, and that these have to inform any type of proposals that we come up with that are to be considered as solutions to the problems and challenges that the Mushkegowuk chiefs say that we have to address or attempt to address. So this is in no way a comprehensive list of all of the standards, all of the values, and all of the beliefs that we follow. This is just some of the core ones that we at the Lands and Resources Department have to keep in mind when in any work that we do. So there's 3 of them that I'm going to talk about. The first one is the land. The second one is, just give me a second here, community rights. And then the third one is balance. So when it comes to land, and I just have some quotes here from the resolutions, and I'll read through some of them, and I'm just going to chat about it. But I think it goes without saying that caring for the land is one of those sort of values that the Omushkegowuk have, that, it goes without saying that the land has to be of the utmost importance in our decision making, and like more specifically caring for the land. So we can't bring a proposal to community members that doesn't uphold this standard or this value. So here's some quotes from the resolutions. The Omushkegowuk have a duty to uphold the highest respect for the land, the water, and all living things. These play a large part in preserving our culture and traditional ways of life. There is a connection between the health of the land and the health of our material, spiritual, and cultural lives. And the Omushkegowuk have an inherent right and a duty to govern and manage their traditional territories. So these are sort of some ways that the chiefs have communicated to us one very important standard that we have to follow. The second one is community rights, or the rights that community members have, and the rights of the Omushkegowuk. These are very sacred. They're so important, and they are at the foundation of everything that we at the Lands and Resources Department do. We can never formulate a proposal or bring a proposal to the community members that would in any way, shape, or form infringe upon or otherwise diminish the rights of the Omushkegowuk. So our Indigenous and treaty rights are the foundation of any discussions about protecting the land. And this comes from 1989. And, some of these resolutions and directives go back to the 1980s, but they're still relevant today. Mushkegowuk communities have a right to govern themselves and the right to use and benefit from their traditional lands. The exercise of these rights are the foundation of restoring community well-being and to protect the land and resources for future generations. Our rights have not been diminished or surrendered. So a lot of these standards that get communicated to us from the Council of Chiefs, I don't think it would be too far of a stretch to say that many, if not most, if not all, Mushkegowuk people hold these standards, hold these values, that it would be hard to find someone who would say it's okay to come to them with a proposal that would infringe on their rights. We can't do that. That's just something, it's a line that we would not cross. And then the final one is balance. And sort of, there's, oftentimes when we're trying to develop proposals or find solutions to the problems and challenges that the Council of Chiefs says that we have to work on, we get pulled in different directions, and we have to try to find a balance between the two. And specifically in this case, when it comes to protecting the land, caring for the land, and at the Lands and Resources Department, one of the main balances that we have to strike is the balance between the need to protect the land on the one hand and the need for a development on the other hand. So we want our communities to be prosperous, and we want to protect the land at the same time. So any proposal that we bring typically has to strike a balance between these two things. And I'll just read through these quotes really quick. It is the desire of each First Nation to grow and prosper and become self-sufficient. The Mushkegowuk communities have a direct interest in how resources get managed. Mushkegowuk people have the right to benefit from resource development in our territories in accordance with the spirit of respect for the land. So these three standards, I just bring them up because they are at the core of our thinking and our actions, and they inform any type of proposals that we bring to the communities for their consideration, such as, for example, the Omushkego Wahkohtowin PFP. Okay, now I'm going to get into more specific, so the other level that sort of resolutions work at, and this is just, there's more than two probably, but the other one that I want to focus on today is that, so the resolutions communicate these standards that we have to follow, but then they also communicate problems and challenges that the Mushkegowuk Council is supposed to attempt to find solutions for, and then to bring those solutions in the form of a proposal to the communities. So I'm going to focus on 6 here. There's obviously more, and just to clarify, I'm not dealing with health-related resolutions or education-related resolutions or youth-related resolutions. Everything is interconnected, but I'm going to focus more on what resolutions that pertain to the Lands and Resources Department and the specific problems and challenges that the Council of Chiefs have asked us to find solutions for. And one more thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to start introducing the ways in which, and it's just going to be very casual remarks at this point. I'll get more into the nuts and bolts in my presentation on what is a PFP. So I'm just going to be, off the cuff sort of remarks of the ways in which the Omushkego Wahkohtowin, a PFP, is sort of offers a solution to these 6 action items that the Council of Chiefs have asked us to find solutions for. So the first one is, and this goes way back, and it just another one of those ones that, it goes without saying, but we have to find ways to care for the land. That's been a sort of marching order that the Mushkegowuk Chiefs have given to the Mushkegowuk Council since its formation in the 1980s. So I'll just, they've asked us to prepare and implement strategies and measures to defend the lands the Creator gave us, of which we are the stewards. Develop a program that maintains high environmental standards and work with the communities to improve the quality of the environment. Begin working on a regional climate change strategy, and protect the water. So these are just a few examples. They're not all of them. But just very briefly, the Omushkego Wahkohtowin will, and I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts later, but it's going to establish an area that will be protected under an indigenous-led paradigm, and in a way that doesn't infringe on or in any way diminish our rights as Omushkegowuk. It will put us in a position to develop standards using a traditional indigenous knowledge and traditional land management principles. It's going to, should it be successful, should the communities accept the proposal, and that has not happened yet across the board, it will make a major contribution to mitigating the effects of climate change. And I'm going to try to get a scientist on to talk about this stuff because it requires expert knowledge in a sense. But on the other hand, what I've learned about the Mushkeg, for example, the Hudson Bay, James Bay lowlands, the peatlands, is that they store an immense amount of carbon. And they don't just store it, they sequester it from the atmosphere. So they take a carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the Mushkeg. The Mushkeg is, I believe, the second largest in the world and the largest in North America. And it basically, one way that I understand what it does is that it acts as a sort of global air conditioner. Because it takes a carbon, which has been identified as one of the things that's responsible for global warming. So in protecting the Mushkeg, we're not only protecting our culture, but we're helping to contribute to mitigating the effects of climate change on a global level. How would the Omushkego Wahkohtowin protect the water? Well, in addition to the PFP, we've initiated the NMCA. That's a National Marine Conservation Area, and that's being established to protect the bay. If this is successful, it would give us the power to monitor the health of the fresh water, the rivers, the lakes, and to have a say in not only how they get protected, but just to make sure that any type of a development that occurs that the communities approve of will be done in a way that lessens the impact on the quality of our rivers and our lakes. I'll have more to say about that in the future. The second action item that I want to bring up is finance. So I'll just go through these and then I'll explain how the PFP offers a solution to the problem of financing land-based initiatives. So here, find funding to protect the environment and build a capacity by developing funding relationships. Secure the financial resources necessary to manage and protect the land using the traditional land management systems of the Omushkegowuk. Projects from the past have not been fully implemented because of a lack of financial resources. Reliance on a government funding alone only perpetuates the crises that our communities are facing. So it's important to note at the outset that the PFP is not going to be a solution to all of the problems and challenges that our communities face, but it's going to be a step in the right direction. And how the PFP, how the Omushkego Wahkohtowin, a PFP, offers a solution to the question of a sustainable long-term financing is that that's exactly what it's designed to do. It emerged as an answer to the problem that commitments to a conservation, commitments made by, say, for example, governments to protecting the land, and I'm talking about financial commitments, are often or have been in the past unreliable. They haven't panned out the way, the way that they were supposed to. So people devised a way of, or they devised a solution to it through the PFP model, which basically puts a lot of money into a pot, and I'm going to go into this in more detail in a future presentation. It puts a lot of money into a pot, and then that pot is used to build up what's called sustainable finance mechanisms that will provide our communities with a budget that they can rely on in a perpetuity. The financial framework that we are attempting to set up and will set up should we get the approval of the communities to move forward with this would be a source of funds to pay for conservation efforts in the communities that are led by the communities forever, basically. That's what we're trying to set up. So no reliance on government funding. We'll have our own source of financing, and yeah, that's basically the short of it. It's PFPs are designed to finance and to benefit indigenous communities in perpetuity. But like I said, I'll get more into that in more detail in a future presentation. Excuse me. Okay, the third action item that I'm looking at is develop new relationships that advance self-determination. And I'll just read through the quotes from the resolutions here. Develop new relationships as a step towards regaining a control over our lands and resources. Build nation-to-nation relationships. The Mushkegowuk Council must engage the people, governments, and other interests on behalf of the communities to achieve these goals. Be prepared to co-manage our lands, and reaffirm respect for our traditional land and resource management systems. So basically what's, in my own personal experience, I believe that the current political climate has been the most favorable to advancing indigenous self-determination, indigenous control over our own lands than it has been in, I can't I don't know when it has been this favorable to these things. We've been, the way the federal government has been interacting with us has been on, they've been conducting themselves in, or according to the spirit of nation to nation relationships. The partnerships that we've been able to develop with universities, with NGOs, with charitable foundations, have all been based on an indigenous-led paradigm. I guess what I'm trying to say, in my own experience, we have a seat at the table. We are being involved in across the whole decision-making spectrum. It's hard to say if this, a climate, how long it'll last, if it'll, come around again, but we are currently living in times that are very favorable to us taking steps to regaining a control over our lands. The second action item that I'm going to make mention of is develop land use plans. So each community needs its own land use plans, and we need a regional land use plan. Map out traditional homelands and historical occupancy. Assist individual First Nations who wish to develop their own land use plans if requested to do so. So how is the Omushkego Wahkohtowin a solution to this? Well, we're currently in the planning phase. It hasn't even begun yet. There's a lot of conditions that have to be met, most importantly of which is a community, a consensus to move forward with this. But if we are successful, if we meet all of the conditions that need to be met, each community is going to get a funding to conduct its own land use plans in the first 3 to 5 years of the implementation phase. So very briefly, and I'm going to get into this next week, like I said, we're currently in the planning phase. No deals have been signed. Nothing is, no agreements have been made. We're just laying the groundwork. And then once the planning phase is over, if the communities say to move forward with it, if all the conditions get met, we enter a 10-year phase where we set everything up, where the communities have control, or they get a funding to have control over how they implement their own conservation plans, and perhaps more importantly, to develop their own land use plans. We've been working with we got a permission from the Council of Chiefs to request a land use plans from the communities. And one of the ways that we've been talking about it is sort of like a green light, a yellow light, a red light. So a green light in your communities, that would mean, okay, you can do a development there. Yellow light would be like, well, let's talk about it type thing. And then red light would be, these areas are off limits. So anyways, long story short, and I'm going to get more into it, there will be, if we move forward with this, there will be a funding available for each community to conduct its own land use plans. So that's the Omushkego Wahkohtowin, a PFP, is a solution to that. Assist the communities when asked to do so. So this is very important. Provide technical resources to First Nations to assist them in their work. Provide support on specific issues if requested to do so. If we do move forward with this, it's going to establish a very clear and a direct link between the Omushkego Wahkohtowin PFP and the communities. So responses to needs from the communities is going to happen much more quickly. The financial resources will be in place to make this happen, and the governance frameworks will be in place to make this happen, a community-driven governance frameworks. So the Omushkego Wahkohtowin will vastly improve the Mushkegowuk Council's ability to be responsive to the needs of the communities and to assist when asked to do so. One more thing about that too is the relationships that have been developed in the course of the planning process has given us access to a lot of capacity from scientists from universities, scientists from ENGOs, experts of various sorts. I don't see why they will not remain at the disposal of First Nations to help out where and when needed. I think that these relationships are very important to us. They're very useful. They're very beneficial, and we will likely continue to rely on them in the future. I think this is the last action item I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be wrapping up the presentation pretty soon. Resource development, regional economy. Advocate for the wise use and extraction of our natural resources. Work towards establishing First Nation directed resource development. Pursue regional economic opportunities. Develop a Mushkegowuk investment fund. Any regional development initiative must benefit all Mushkegowuk First Nations. So the Omushkego, Wahkohtowin, and the amounts of dollars that are generally associated with PFPs are measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars. This is one of the merits of PFPs is they're not solely a conservation mechanisms. They're designed to be of benefit to the local communities and indigenous peoples who live on the land where the PFP gets established. This is going to benefit everybody in some way, shape, or form, and not just directly related to conservation. It's going to be used as a leverage to help the communities find solutions for other problems and challenges that they are being faced with. In terms of a Mushkegowuk investment fund, a part of the fund that we're going to be developing, and the if we get permission to do so, and the budget, there is going to be dollars set aside for a Mushkegowuk small businesses. So it's gonna, it's just going to be an investment fund to invest in small businesses. It's going to be used to invest in a conservation economy. And one more thing also is that through this process, we're developing stronger ties to industry. So it's going to give us the opportunity to benefit from a development, perhaps more so than in the past. So those are the ways that the Omushkego Wahkohtowin is going to offer, in part, a solution to the chief's call to the Mushkegowuk Council to work towards resource development in a good way, in a way that respects the land, and work towards developing a regional economy. Okay, so moving into the concluding sections here, I just want to offer some brief comments on community engagement protocol. This is one of those standards or values and beliefs that have been communicated to the council from the chiefs, and that are at the center of everything that we do. So the first one is the Mushkegowuk Council cannot infringe on the rights, autonomy, or existing agreements that First Nations have in place. That's a line that we can't cross, and we would not bring a proposal knowingly, like if there's elements in a proposal that would be a solution to some of the problems and challenges that we face that cross this line, it would be unknowingly. We would not consciously come to the communities with a proposal that crosses this line. The second one is each First Nation reserves the right to accept or reject any proposed agreement. This goes back to the 1980s, and it still stands today. The Omushkego Wahkohtowin, PFP, as I've already mentioned, is just that, a proposal. We are in the planning phase. We're trying to get all the pieces in place so that if the communities were to accept it, we would be ready to move forward with it. If the communities reject it, then we're not going to move forward with it. And that's just it. It's kind of black and white like that. And finally, Mushkegowuk people must actively participate in the planning, development, and ownership of projects that have the approval of the Mushkegowuk First Nations. This still stands as well. Once or if the Omushkego Wahkohtowin PFP gets approved, then we enter the implementation phase. I was kind of mentioning it already. And that's when the funds are going to get transferred to the communities, and responsibility for a conservation is going to get taken over by the communities. They're going to be leading the way at all stages of the process, from planning to implementation. They're going to be responsible for everything. And if you need, the help of the Mushkegowuk Council, we're still going to have a part to play in all this, but the project, if it gets approved, if we meet all the conditions, is going to get transferred to the communities. And you're basically going to take it over and start to direct the process on your own traditional territories. Okay, I just want to offer some initial comments on the timelines that we're working in. I thought it was interesting. I heard one of the community members made a comment. They said, why are we just hearing about this now? A part of the answer to that is that in a relative sense, we're just hearing about this now. It's, we are working and then the other part of the answer is that we have to follow a community engagement of protocols. So to answer the first part, most PFPs have 2 to 3 years to do all of the community engagement, the education, the awareness raising that needs to be done in order for the communities to make an informed decision. We only have 12 months to work through all this, to get all the pieces in place, to do all the community engagement. And the reason why we only have 12 months is because of the upcoming federal election. As I mentioned earlier, we are in a political climate that is, in a sense, unprecedented. The way that NGOs have been working with us, the way that universities have been working with us, the way that foundations have been working with us, and most notably, the way that the federal government has been working with us is very much based on nation-to-nation relations. This may not last or survive the next federal election. Historically speaking, conservative governments tend to not make environmental protection a high priority, and they also tend to not make building good relations with indigenous peoples a high priority. So we're trying to, if the communities within this compressed timeline do decide that this is worth moving forward with, we have to do it we have to try to make it happen before the next federal election, because if there is a changing of the guard, these opportunities may not exist. They may no longer exist. In terms of why some communities are just hearing about this now, so when we first caught wind of the project, we had to, or this opportunity, we had to get our foot in the door, so that took time. Once we got our foot in the door and we actually had something real on our hands, we had to bring it to the chiefs at an annual General Assembly. So we had to wait for one. I think the one we brought it to was in June of 2023. And we had to get a permission from the chiefs, one, to pursue this opportunity, to, develop this proposal. And two, we got permission to ask the communities for permission to go into the communities. Since that time, we have been using all of the resources at our disposal to get into the communities. But it can be difficult. I know it's been a hard winter for a lot of the communities. There's, they've had some difficult experiences. So oftentimes some communities, have to cancel community engagements because they have other, pressing matters that the community is dealing with. So We are currently in a sort of supercharged phase, and that's why we're having these sessions. But as an answer to your, that question, why we're only hearing about this now, one, in a relative sense, we're just hearing about this now. We had to lay all the groundwork to put something together. We have to follow all this protocol, and we're working within a compressed time frame. We only have 12 months. And it's important to note too, just one last point here, is that opportunities such as these that are sort of like a package deals, they enable us to address many, if not all, of the action items and directives that the Mushkegowuk Council of Chiefs has passed down to the Mushkegowuk Council. These sorts of opportunities are rare. And there's no guarantees that we will be able to reap the potential benefits of this opportunity. Even if full community consensus is achieved, even if every single, in a hypothetical situation, every single community member said, yes, let's move forward with this, it still may not be realizable. There's a range of factors and there's a range of conditions that have to be met in order to move forward with this. One of the biggest, roadblocks and sort of, if we get approval to move forward with this, is the government of Ontario. We've managed to open up the door. We are in negotiations to try to get them on board, but because there is a terrestrial component to this that has to do with the land, if Ontario is not on board, then this will not move forward. So anyways, I just want to throw that out there that, we're doing our best to engage with the communities, to follow the protocol, to educate the people so that they can make an informed decision. We are working within compressed timelines, but we're using all of the resources that are at our disposal to make sure that the community members are informed and that they feel comfortable saying yes or no. So that's it for today. We're going to be moving on to there's a Zoom meeting that's going to get posted in the Facebook chat. Feel free to attend. Like I said at the beginning, it's for the Zoom meeting is intended for Mushkegowuk citizens, because this community engagement effort is a part of informing our citizens about what they need to know so that they can make an informed decision. The other sort of a group that would be allowed would be people sent by a chief and council to attend. So if they're not Mushkegowuk citizens, but they've been sent by a chief and council, then that would be okay too. I do have a list of the resolutions that I use. These aren't all of them. If you are interested in these resolutions, let us know in the comments, and I'll post them all in the comments. I'll just cut and paste them, and we will post the link to the Mushkegowuk Council's webpage where you can go and see these resolutions. Miigwech, thank you very much.